Hello Triple students and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at the kidney and how the kidney works, and then we're going to move on to look at how water is regulated through the body in homeostasis, so osmoregulation. So hopefully you'll follow me through this, and then we'll talk about all the hormone control in the next video. So there's quite a lot of revision based in this first one, linking together ideas in biology. So I'm going to start with these starters. So you might want to pause this so that you can get the answers, and then you can self-assess after and see how you've got on. So number one is, what is the word equation for aerobic respiration? Number two, what are the waste products for respiration moved from the body? And question number three, why is the pituitary gland known as the master gland? And number four, how do hormones travel to their target organs? So hopefully you've paused that and we can go through the answers. So the first one we have got is aerobic respiration. Aerobic meaning, of course, with oxygen. So that is oxygen or O2, glucose C6H12O6, reacts together to form, that's what the arrow means, carbon dioxide, water, and it releases energy. It doesn't produce energy, but it does release energy. How are waste products for respiration removed from the body? Well, we breathe out, so we do gas exchange in the lungs and breathe out the carbon dioxide. Water we lose via sweating, and we also lose it in urine, and we also lose it through our breath. Why is the pituitary gland known as the master gland? Well, it produces hormones that act on target organs, so it also stimulates other organs, other glands to produce hormones as well. How do hormones travel to their target organs? Well, remember, hormones are chemical messengers that travel in the blood. So let's get cracking on the next one. So here is another grid for you of revision. So you might want to pause this and just double check your knowledge on this. So the first one is osmosis. What is osmosis? That is the movement of water molecules from an area high to low concentration along a concentration gradient through a partially permeable membrane. What are the factors that can affect the rate of diffusion? Well, that of course is temperature, what words am I trying to say? So temperature will increase the rate of diffusion. The surface of which the diffusion is happening, so if the distance is small, so if it's only one cell thick, it will diffuse faster. And the other is the size of the concentration gradient. So if we have a very steep concentration gradient, it will go faster. How do vaccines make a person immune to an illness? Well, vaccines contain a dead or inactive part of the pathogen, which allows the body to produce antibodies that can fight off an illness. So you get a mark for a dead and inactive part, allow you to make antibodies. Therefore, if they were introduced to that pathogen at a later date, the secondary response is much, much quicker. What is the role of mitochondria? Well, this is the site in the cell where respiration takes place, and that releases energy for the whole of the body in the cell. The next one, give an example of a non-communicable disease. Like a really obvious one is cancer or asthma or diabetes. What is a risk factor? A risk factor is anything that can also affect your health. So, for example, if you don't sleep enough, you're more likely to get ill. If you smoke, you are more likely to damage your health. What is the role of the phloem? The role of the phloem is to move food around the plant. Usually it's translocation, the movement of glucose around the plant. It is living and it can transport glucose up and down, whereas the xylem can only transport water up. Give one organelle that can be found in a plant and an animal cell. I go with a nucleus on that one, but you could also have cytoplasm, cell membrane. And then the last one is, what is a placebo? So a placebo is a false drug, if you like, or a drug that is used as a control when doing an experiment into drugs to test the efficacy of drugs. I've got this, so you can print this if you want to, or just draw and add underneath. So you're going to need to pause this in a second as well. So add an arrow to each diagram to show which way water is moving. Describe and explain what is happening to each of these cells. Now, you can see there are 4 portions there. What is happening to each of these cells? So this is going back all the way to biology paper 1, topic 1, about diffusion and osmosis. So I'd expect to see those words. Okay, so let's have a look at the animal cell. So this is a red blood cell, and I know that because it's got a biconcave shape. And here we've got 3 particles in on the left, and we've got many particles outside. And then on the right, we have got more particles inside than we have outside. So you would need to say there's a lower water concentration inside the cell, so the water would move into the cell via osmosis. The cell could eventually swell up and it could then potentially burst. Whereas in the other cell, we've got a lower concentration outside of the cell and the water can move out through osmosis. And the cell could then shrink. And then we've got our plant cell. So similar process. So here we've got a cell that has a lower water content inside the cell, so the water could move in and it could become turgid when it swells. The cell wall will prevent it from bursting because it's a really strong structure, whereas an animal cell doesn't have a cell wall. And then in the other one, it will become flaccid because the cell will shrink as the cytoplasm pulls away from the cell wall because the water concentration is lower outside the cell, so all the water will leave the cell. These kinds of things become relevant and linked together and really go for those higher grades when you can link the idea of osmosis and diffusion along with works of the kidney, which is what we're going to be talking about today. How does water leave the body? Well, we already said via breathing, sweating and urinating. Not very much in your poop unless you're having a particularly bad day, but that's how water leaves our body. Exhaling, sweating and urinating. The body doesn't control these two. These are part of homeostasis. They're controlled by your hypothalamus, so you have no auditory control. So let's talk about the kidneys. So your kidney is an organ found in your lower back, essentially. So if you lose too much water via osmosis, it can be really damaging to your cells. So people that have diabetes, for example, they can't lower the concentration of glucose in their blood. So this causes their cells to lose water, which causes them to become thirsty and urinate often. The kidneys help control those water levels in our blood, and they help remove some toxins as well. So they remove excess water, ions and urea. Please be aware when you're answering questions about the kidneys, the word concentration in the blood is really, really important. So the amount of water in the blood, amount of ions in the blood, please try and use the word concentration. It's very important. So this is a diagram of this centre part of the kidney. Okay, so this is called a nephron. You don't need to memorise this diagram, but it's just important when explaining what's going on. So you might want to just do a little diagram of it. So that round bit at the top, the yellow round bit at the top is called the Bowman's capsule, and the red bit is your blood vessels. So your blood enters the kidney through the renal artery. And anything to do with kidneys is called renal. And then I'm going to go through the stages of what happens in the kidney. So the kidney is all about absorption and reabsorption. So it's using the words. It's concentration in the blood and absorption and reabsorption and selective absorption in the kidneys. The blood passes through the kidneys. So it comes in through the renal artery. Small molecules are filtered out into the kidney from the blood. So high concentration in the blood, low concentration in the kidney. So they pass through. Water, glucose and ions enter the kidney, so enter the Bowman's capsule, and they travel along the nephron. Now, some of these smaller particles like glucose, ions and water are reabsorbed, and this is called selective reabsorption. So based on the amount of glucose required in the body, anything particularly useful is reabsorbed. So if you find sugar in the urine, that is also another indicator that we have got some issues going on because the kidneys haven't been able to reabsorb it all. Excess water and ions are removed as urine. So if you have taken on a lot of water and you don't need that amount of water in your body, there is a hormonal control there with a hormone called ADH. We're going to talk about that in a different lesson, in the one after this. So ADH is responsible for essentially telling the kidneys concentration's too high of water in the blood, get rid of some, create some more urine. If it's too low, it's like reabsorb as much as you can. If you want to draw that, there's some labels for you to put on your diagram. So let's have a look at this. So again, this is application of your knowledge. This is an AO2 skill. So we need to look at what these two graphs show. So the first one in red on the left, this shows the concentration of glucose in the blood. Now, as it enters the kidneys, it's at that level, and when it leaves the kidneys, it is that level. So this shows what? Well, it shows that the concentration of glucose in the blood before and after entering the kidney is the same. So, of course, what we can say there is that the kidneys have reabsorbed all of the glucose that have entered them. So all of that glucose has gone into the kidney and all of it has been reabsorbed back into the blood. Okay, so the concentration remains constant. See how the key words I've used there, concentration and reabsorption. And now we've got in green concentration of ions in the blood. So it was higher before it entered the kidneys and lower after it entered the kidneys. So that means only some, well, actually quite a lot, 2/3 of the ions have been reabsorbed back into the blood because they were in a useful amount. The rest of them lost in urine. Concentration of water in the blood before entering the kidneys, very high, and after entering the kidneys, very, very low indeed. So that means that all of the water has passed through the kidneys and has been stored in the bladder as urine. None of that water has been reabsorbed back into the blood. So let's talk a bit about urea, because urea and water makes urine. Okay, so we know that proteins get digested and broken down into amino acids, which are deaminated in the liver to produce ammonia. So the proteins that are digested and broken down, the amino acids produce leftover ions and ammonia, and that is converted into urea. There you go, you might just want to write down your sentences there. So the urea is toxic, so the body immediately converts it into urine to excrete it safely. If it's not being removed, then you become very ill indeed. Anyone who knows how kidney disease will attest to that. Okay, so I've got some exam questions coming up now. This is the last part of this lesson. You might want to pause it and really just check that you understand. It's 10 minutes long. There are 8 marks available. Normally we do a mark per minute, but I've given you a few extras. So you might want to start, they're on 2 different slides. So spend a couple of minutes on each slide. Oh, this one's just going to carry on timing. So I'm just going to say that's Okay, here's the first question. So this again is an AO2 skill because it is applying your knowledge. So it's important to maintain water balance in the body. The graphs show how much water is gained per person and lost per person by different methods in one day. So we've got food, drink, and metabolism. So that's the water gained by the body, and we've got the water lost from the body, urine, skin, and urine, skin, and breathing. Okay, when water is balanced, the volume of water taken in by the body is equal to the volume lost from the body. Calculate the volume of water the person lost in one day in feces. Use the information from the graphs above. So it is lost in feces, but you need to work out how much of it has been lost in total. So you can probably do that by it says use the information, so have a go. Pause that. Okay, so there's another, just a quick 1 mark question, very common, very low demand. Sometimes they have high demand ones because they're very simple. So the graphs show that one method of gaining water is by metabolism. Which metabolism process produces water? So again, this is another lovely link. Breakdown of proteins, changing glycogen to glucose, digestion of fat, or respiration. There's only one obvious answer for me there, but this is for you to answer. The next day, the person ran a 10-kilometre race. Explain the volume of water loss. So this is going to be, this is an explain question. So this is an AO2 or it's an AO2 skill because you're not having to justify anything or evaluate it. But you have to explain why more water is lost through the skin during the race. So this is going to be linking to our thermoregulation lesson also. And explain why more water is lost by breathing during the race. And again, this is going to be linking to our respiration. So you can see how with the triple science, there's much more linking between topics. Here's the mark scheme. So you should have worked out that 120 was the amount of feces that would have been produced. So you needed to use the information to work out how much was made and then how much you need to take away from it. Respiration of glucose makes water, and sweating releases heat or allows the body to cool down quicker, maintain body temperature. And then more energy is needed, so we have more respiration, increased breathing rate, so therefore you're losing more water. All very, very simple. Thank you very much. Have a go at the work I'm going to set on Doddle. See you later, triples.